We want to invite into the stream right now to talk more about this, Mickey Chadha. He's the Vice President and Senior Credit Officer at Moody's, to talk about some of the trends in retail sales and where we might be headed. Good to have you here, Mickey. You're joining us on the phone. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So when you take a look at where retail sales went in October, up but slower than the pace we had seen in September and in August, are we going to continue to see this slowdown going into the holiday? I mean, we're in the holiday shopping season now.
Well, you know, the sales that came out today, the October sales, were a little softer than what we expected. But if you look at September, you know, which had a pretty good number, they're not bad at all. It's pretty impressive. And if you look at the year-over-year growth that we're seeing in October, it's pretty impressive at 8.5% over 2019. So that just tells you that the consumer, despite the fact that the pandemic has unleashed this dislocation in all across retail and the economy with closures, et cetera, you know, it's fairly robust spending that we were seeing. And so, you know, we're forecasting a 3 to 5% growth in retail sales for the full year. Regarding the holiday sales, it's very difficult to compare holiday sales this year to last year, primarily because this season is going to be very elongated, which means that, as you know, sales promotions for the holidays have already started a couple of weeks ago. And because e-commerce is going to be a huge part of retail sales during the holiday, the comparisons for last year are very difficult to make. But we are cautiously optimistic that the holiday season will actually turn out to be pretty good, considering that the retail sales have held out pretty well.
Mickey, how much so of this rides on the fact that Americans are expecting more stimulus? Because I think that's a big question going forward, whether or not that's helped at least give them a little bit more confidence over the past couple of months. And that might not be the case, at least throughout the holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stimulus would be a huge positive, because when you look at the overall consumer spending and the actual economy and the unemployment, you know, a lot of the lower end consumers are hurting still. And the stimulus was a big part of their spend back in April, May, even June. When the stimulus expired, we were expecting something to happen, but that hasn't happened yet. So that would definitely be a positive. But stimulus aside, we're seeing a huge shift in dollar spend from things that are experience-oriented, like travel or restaurants or vacations, et cetera, that people cannot actually do because, number one, things are closed, restaurants are closed, you're not eating out, you're not really traveling anywhere. So that dollar shift spend has come into retail, especially in categories that are more stay-at-home categories. You're seeing home improvement really do well. You're seeing furniture sales really do well. Sporting goods really do well. You know, things that people are doing to entertain themselves when they're at home and when they're not really able to do anything other than that are really doing very well. And e-commerce is really skyrocketing because people are consolidating trips to the store and basically ordering stuff online, which they haven't done in such large numbers in the past.
But we're seeing, for instance, Illinois is considering cutting down the percent of people occupancy within retail outlets. Even with e-commerce surging, isn't the spike in COVID cases that we're experiencing right now in the country going to have a damper on the projection you have of full year 3 to 5% growth?
Well, that is a very good point. You know, the downside risks are still high. So we actually changed our outlook for retail to stable in October. It was negative prior to that, on the premise that business conditions are going to improve in the next 12 months. And so the downside risk to that is a huge increase in coronavirus cases that causes widespread shutdowns. Now, our case does not currently include a widespread shutdown in retail. And if that happens, yes, of course, that is going to actually be a negative, primarily because the retailers are just coming out of a pretty bad, past summer when they were actually closed in April and May. And so in order for us to see a growth in profitability and sales, the stores need to be open, even if there's still social distancing and limitations to the store. So yes, that is a downside risk.
Mickey, what are your thoughts just on department stores? Because we were talking to Jerry Storch, the former CEO of Toys R Us, last hour, and he was basically saying that none of them are positioned well, at least for the climate that we're in right now. And we can see that with Kohl's numbers this morning. We have Macy's later this week. We have Nordstrom next week. I guess, are any of the department stores, from your view, entering holiday season well positioned?
Well, I think the department stores are actually the ones that were really suffered the most. Apparel and department stores were the ones that suffered the most, including off-price, primarily because the stores were closed. So coming into the holiday season, you would assume that their inventory levels are actually not bad. They actually have reduced their inventory. The promotional cadence, though, is going to be pretty high. E-commerce is going to actually be pretty high, even for the department stores. Mall-based stores are experiencing issues, number one, because, a lot of people aren't really going to the malls, right? So you're not going to the mall to hang out because you're afraid of social distancing norms, et cetera. And so traffic into the stores is definitely going to be low. However, you have retailers and department stores like Macy's and Nordstrom's, et cetera, who actually have done a really good job on their e-commerce platforms. And so that's going to be the game changer if they can actually accelerate those e-commerce sales, compensate the lower traffic into the stores, they'll do okay. But they're coming from a really low space. And so, we're expecting the growth trajectory for these stores and department stores from a profitability standpoint to actually be pretty good into next year, if, of course, the stores can remain open and there's no store closures that were mandated back in the early summer.
Mickey Chadha is the Vice President and Senior Credit Officer at Moody's. We appreciate your being here to talk about retail sales with us on Yahoo Finance Live.